Welcome to this explainer. I'm thrilled to be your guide today as we, put on our global economist hats and map out the, let's be honest, pretty chaotic macroeconomic reality we're all facing in 2026. If you've been looking at the global economy lately and feeling a profound sense of whiplash, well, trust me, you are absolutely not alone. We're navigating this crazy environment where low growth, high inflation, and just massive debt are all colliding in real time. But here's the thing, it's not just a random mess. There is actually a highly structured framework behind what's happening globally right now, and we're going to break the whole shebang down together.
So why exactly do markets boom while our wallets shrink? I mean, this is the glaring paradox of 2026, right? It's really the ultimate economic mystery of our time. On one side of the equation, we've got stock markets hitting absolute record highs, just completely fueled by these unbelievable technological valuations. Yet, on the exact same day, everyday households are actually feeling poorer, totally squeezed by rising living costs and wage stagnation. Honestly, it feels like two completely different economies operating on the exact same planet.
To solve this mystery, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at the paradox, then move into the global risk map, examine some echoes of the past, unpack the demographic trap, and finally, zoom all the way out to look at the cycle transition.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the paradox, defining Neo-Stagflation.
Now, traditionally, stagflation meant an economy was in an outright recession while inflation was just raging. But 2026? It's a whole different beast. We call this a Neo-Stagflation regime. An economy enters this trap if it hits just two of three really painful conditions. So that's CPI sitting materially above the central bank's target, real GDP dragging below its long-term trend, or acute household stress. Things like weak real wages. In this modern era, nominal GDP might still be growing on paper, but the actual real-world conditions for workers, they're deteriorating badly.
Moving on to Section 2, the global risk map, slicing the economy.
If we take a look at global GDP, over half of the world is trapped right now. Over half! But it breaks down into three very distinct variants. We've got deep stagflation at roughly 8%, structural stagflation making up about 30%, and a massive 45% trapped in what we call asset stagflation. The absolute crucial takeaway here is that stagflation in 2026 is definitely not a one-size-fits-all crisis. No way. It looks vastly different depending on the specific region you're analyzing. So let's break those down.
First up, we have deep stagflation. This is your classic severe emerging market variant. We're seeing this right now in places like Argentina, Turkey, Egypt, and Nigeria. It's largely driven by extreme currency depreciation, which just imports severe food and energy inflation right into the country. Add in crushing external debt pressures and sky-high interest rates, and boom, you've got an environment where growth completely collapses while prices just relentlessly skyrocket.
But then, we cross the globe to places like the US, Canada, and Australia, and we find asset stagflation. This is perhaps the most fascinating and honestly under-recognized form of stagflation today. In the real economy, we've got slowing growth, massive living cost pressures, and wage stagnation. But across the aisle, an AI and technology asset boom, equity markets near historic highs, and just extreme wealth concentration. It's wild. Technological capital is absolutely flourishing, while the real, everyday economy essentially stagnates.
Okay, Section 3. Echoes of the past, historical comparisons.
You constantly hear pundits screaming on TV that we're back in the 1970s. But look, the 1970s were defined by strong labor unions, wage price spirals, and manufacturing-led economies. Fast forward to 2026, and our reality is completely different. Today is totally dominated by AI capital concentration, massive service economies, and extreme wealth inequality. We aren't dealing with labor-driven inflation here. We are dealing with technology and capital-driven distortions.
So, the really crucial point to grasp is that 2026 is not just a simple repeat of a single historical era. It's actually this highly complex, somewhat toxic hybrid of three distinct crises all blending together. We have the resurgent inflation and Middle East energy disruptions that totally echo the 1970s. But we also have the deglobalization, trade barriers, and state capitalism reminiscent of the 1930s. And to top it all off, we have the massive debt burdens and aging populations that perfectly mirrored Japan in the 1990s. It's quite the cocktail.
That brings us to Section 4, the demographic trap, Europe and Australia.
So think about this. Does an aging society cause prices to fall, or does it actually force inflation structurally higher? For a long time, the global consensus was that older populations meant less consumption, which naturally meant deflation. But the reality we're seeing in 2026 Europe and Australia is proving the exact opposite. As it turns out, aging is actually incredibly inflationary.
Let's walk through the chain reaction here because it's fascinating. Step 1. As the population ages, your available labor supply decreases, which makes workers much more scarce and, therefore, expensive. Step 2. Older populations naturally require vastly more medical care, which drives up healthcare costs. Step 3. To actually pay for all this, governments are forced into expanding fiscal deficits. And Step 4. The culmination of this whole chain reaction is a permanent structural inflation floor. You get long-term low growth combined with a core inflation that simply refuses to drop.
And, alongside those aging demographics, we have to layer on geopolitical amplifiers. Places like Germany and the UK are highly dependent on global energy and trade. When you add in shipping choke points in the Red Sea, the immense cost of duplicating supply chains just to avoid geopolitical rivals, and massive new defense spending under this return to state capitalism, well, you cement that inflation floor even higher. The state has to intervene more, which costs more money, adding direct fuel to the structural stagflation fire.
Let's wrap things up with Section 5, the cycle transition, a Kondratiev wave. To really understand this ultimate macroeconomic view, we have to look to the Kondratiev wave, which maps out long-term economic cycles. Pre-2020, we were in the late stages of the fifth wave, an era completely defined by globalization, the internet, and hyper-financialization. But now, from roughly 2020 through 2026, we are deep in a chaotic transition phase. We're restructuring energy, fracturing supply chains, and desperately trying to integrate AI. We won't reach the stability of the early sixth wave, which would be a truly automated, new energy global setup, until well into the 2030s.
Which brings us to a really profound realization. Stagflation isn't just some temporary glitch in central bank policy. Nope, it's a symptom of a dying economic cycle and the incredibly painful birth of a new one. Our old, debt-dependent growth model is failing rapidly, breaking down long before the new productivity model has matured enough to support the global economy. We are, quite literally, caught in the messy middle.
And nowhere is this messy transition more obvious than in the huge contradiction between capital and productivity right now. On one side, we have an incredible AI investment surge. Tech valuations are soaring to the moon, and capital is concentrating at the very top. But on the other side, productivity distribution, or rather the total lack of it. The broad economy is completely missing out on widespread productivity gains. AI is creating a massive boom for the asset class, but it just isn't currently trickling down to improve real wages or ease household living costs.
Which leaves us with this final, truly critical question to ponder. Can we survive the transition to a new productivity model? Can we actually escape this current debt-dependent, asset-inflated system and build a future driven by genuine, broadly distributed productivity? The next decade won't just be about whether central banks can tweak interest rates to control inflation. Oh no, it's going to be about whether the global economy can successfully reinvent its growth engine entirely. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the world around you.